Well, President Muhammadu Buhari has commiserated with the leader of the Afenifere, Pa Ruben Fashoranti, on the death of his daughter, Mrs. Funke Olakunrin. The deceased was reportedly shot on Friday on the Kajola-Ore Road in Ondo State by the police, described as armed robbers. In a statement by his special advisor on media and publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, in Abuja on Friday night, the president prayed that God would comfort Fashoranti and give him the fortitude to bear the grievous loss. He also directed security agencies to swing into action and bring the hoodlums to justice in the shortest possible time. Now, an ace public affairs analyst and former spokesperson of the Atiku Abubakar Presidential Campaign Organization, Segun Sowunmi, joins me now from our Abuja studios to discuss some of these issues. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Sowunmi. Well, now let us start by asking, where are you in terms of your challenge of the presidential election results at the tribunal?
Well, we're about now calling our witnesses. We have a few more days to call in as many of the witnesses as time will permit, according to the originally agreed rules. And thereafter, the defendants will now begin to call theirs. So far, so good. We're happy with the way our counsels are prosecuting our case. We're looking forward to the defense of those who are going to be invited to come and defend their own cases to INEC, Buhari, and APC. And ultimately, we hope that justice will be served and Nigerian people will get the justice they deserve.
Indeed, and while we wait for the other people to come out in court, yesterday's hearing was adjourned to Monday, the 15th of July, following the alleged attack on your star witness on their way to court. Now, some people find that rather curious.
Well, we have to know that generally across the land, there's a lot of insecurity, which basically is a failure of government on one side, and then we may not be completely immune. But then again, it's up to the police to go and do very, very thorough investigation to ensure that witnesses do not begin to live in angst and fear and then begin to be cowed or made uncomfortable or persuaded or pressured or intimidated from doing what they are supposed to do. I think that it's despicable, it must be condemned, it is unacceptable, and it stands condemned. We are not in the banana republic. People should be able to do their duties within a reasonable level of safety. You are well aware, like you just said from your news now, one of the daughters of one of the very important Yoruba leaders just lost her life under circumstances that are, as of now, yet to be unraveled. We just want to say that generally across the land, there's a need for security operatives in the country and the agencies to give all Nigerians a sense of security. And we take it very, very seriously that our witnesses were intimidated, harassed, and of course, threatened.
Well, you just took me up on my next question. What's your reaction to the killing of Funke Olakunrin?
Well, I think that the killing of any Nigerian is very, very unacceptable, is very condemned. His Excellency Atiku Abubakar has sent out a very strong and powerful condolence to the family of Chief Fashoranti, and to say that may God repulse this killing, and also to say that enough is enough. This is one killing a bit too much. But we stop short of saying that, of overheating the polity or playing to the mob mentality or quickly determining who has done it and why it was done. We will be more interested in a thorough investigation of the case to figure out precisely what has become this recurring decima, particularly around that road. Is it headsmen? We don't know. Is it criminals? We don't know. Are they thieves? We don't know. Are they armed robbers? We don't know. Are they potential kidnappers? We don't know. It's just the new difficult narrative that Nigeria has to now wake up day in, day out to very, very depressing stories of one person being killed, one person being assassinated, one person being stolen, one person being kidnapped, one person being, maimed. And obviously, if government understands that its first and most important responsibility is the protection of life and property, then I think that the federal government, the ones that are in charge now, momentarily, must take a look at the whole thing and ask themselves, what are they going to do? This is obviously one killing too many. But at the same time, I personally want to call on all Nigerians, especially those that may feel the need to now begin to play the ethnic card right now, to take it easy. nations are always constantly in the process of evolution. There's no nation we know in the world that didn't come out first with many tribes and many tongues, but they figure out a way to be a national country for themselves and to be stable, both within and outside. So I think that it's dangerous for people to begin to push it too much on an ethnic agenda or an ethnic card or a victimization of any other ethnic group. And I think that those in charge of the country should obviously sit up and begin to say enough of all these implosions, tendencies, and what have you.
Indeed, not just ethnic cards. Now, let's look at the recent protest by members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, otherwise known as Shiites, their protest across the country. What did you make of that? And do you think that the federal government is handling them with kids' gloves?
Well, I think that first things first, you need to ask, why is El-Zakzaky being held in spite of numerous court orders to the contrary? If you want to charge someone to court, you should charge him. If you charge him to court, if it's a bailable offense, he should be given bail. And if you want to, if his followers have not seen him, they've not been able to ascertain the state of their leader, given the kind of energetic people that are members of that sect, I think the federal government is really playing too risky. And we do not want a situation where what ordinarily should have been a simple issue that would have been managed under the discipline of following court order, allowing the courts to determine what's going on, will now morph into another very dangerous and much more complex nature of another sectoral terrorism in the country. I think the federal government needs to ask itself precisely, should Nigeria be burning and bleeding on too many fronts? And is the need to keep El-Zakzaky in custody without access to whatever it is that his awfulness are complaining, like maybe his doctors and assessment of his situation, respecting the court orders that the lands have given that they should be released or whatever, you'll ask, why exactly is the federal government risking that we're going to have another bigger issue on our hand, given the fact that we're barely able to contain Boko Haram? We're just gotten out of the extreme part of it, and now we're going to be running ourselves, giving the opportunity for another extreme, potentially dangerous implosion occasioned by terrorists or potentials who can become easily recruited into terrorism. I think comprehensively, government has to look at itself and tell itself, okay, what's the law here? What do we apply? What did the court say? What's the issue? Why is the man being held against his will? Well, it's normal for his people to be agitated, but I want to plead with them. They can have decent dissent. And that means that the use of arms, the brigandage and breaking of stuff, that has to go. Otherwise, they will not be seen for anything other than petty criminals. People can come out and show that displeasure, but they cannot show their displeasure in a manner that becomes violent. At the end of the day, they risk their followers, and it's not good for them, it's not good for the country.
Segun Sowunmi, I'm not letting you go. You're going to have to stay with me, and we will continue this chat after the break. Do stay with me. While you're watching Arise News, we'll continue our conversation with Segun Sowunmi after this short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Arise Africa, and I still have the former spokesperson of the Atiku Abubakar Presidential Campaign Organization, Segun Sowunmi, with me in our Abuja studio. Now, let's move on now. We were talking about security in the country now, and then you mentioned implosions. Recently, we've had at least a lot of, for the better part of last year, we had a lot of clashes between herders and farmers. And the federal government this year decided to come up with the Ruga settlement plan. And that, of course, brought up a lot of public outcry. What's your take on that?
I think it was a mismanaged process. I think ordinarily, if they had thought through that plan of theirs, because I've read what they're trying to do, they would have understood that the first thing that they needed to answer was the insecurity and trust issues. And if they had seen it that way, they would have also figured out that you then cannot put a policy out there that is not well marketed or well explained, given the fact that you have the trust issues and you have the insecurity issues. Then they would have realized that you cannot hastily go and implement it when you do not have all the other agents of government that could have helped your work. You don't have a Minister of Agriculture in place. You don't have a Minister of Communication in place. You don't have your full... So things that could make the work a lot easy. And then you had... the worst of it was that the vice president under whose office this whole thing is supposed to have probably been supervised, then comes to the public to say, I don't know about this, this is not known. And so you had, they left the whole country open to a renewed agitation, which could have been avoided if they had been better able to read and understand the mood of the country and also to understand precisely what problem they were trying to solve. They assumed wrongly that you can come up with a name that probably would be alien to those that you want to go and dovetail that kind of thing in their environment, and you wouldn't explain it, and you wouldn't, make people understand, and it's just give the impression that you're trying to seize people's land so that you can create mini colonies for another particular group. It's unfortunate that that's how badly managed the narrative of the country has been, but you have to hold those who are in charge of the country right now responsible for their, lack of thoughtfulness.
So are you saying that besides logistics and bad management, the Ruga settlement is actually not a bad idea? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't call it a Ruga. I would have just said we're now moving from pastoral, moving up and down the street with cattle, we're moving to ranching. And then I would have just probably told each of those ones that are interested to look for a native name for it, so that once you say, oh, where the animals are going to be kept in their native language, then locals in the area needn't fear it. Because if you look around the country, there would have been communities where animals are sold. So if you're just expanding that space or something, there is a way you go about these things. And there's an attitude of who can bring it and who it can be accepted for. If you have been as parochial as you shouldn't have been, if you have been very, very ethnic in your appointments and your body language, and people think that if people get the impression that you're pampering a bunch of criminals from a particular group who are doing things, you're not calling them out for what they are, you're not waving the big stick, you're not using your body and your attitude to show leadership and telling people that I won't tolerate this in my country, then you have to understand that then you can't come to public space and tell the people that suddenly you're going to be asking them for Ruga. What does it mean? People say it means farm settlement. People say it means ranching in Hausa. Why do you want to why do you want to take a piece of land from Imo for ranching and call it a Hausa name or a Fulani name? Why do you want to do that? So these are, the way you package an idea has a lot to do with the way the idea is going to be received. And you have to look, like I said, you have to know precisely what problem you're trying to solve. If the problem you're trying to solve is food security, there's a different approach. If the problem you're trying to solve is traditional clashes between farmers and headmen, there's a different approach. If the problem you're trying to solve is providing privacy, providing government guarantees for private sector to come and do ranching, like you see in other countries, it's a different approach. So I pity the country that has to deal with the consequences of heightened agitation occasioned by thoughtlessness of those in charge of the country.
Well, let's hopefully this whole plan has been suspended. Let's see if it will still see the light of day with some fine-tuning. Talking about appointments now, who could have made that arrangement something better for the people? On Wednesday, the president of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, he was quoted as saying the ministerial list will be out before the end of the week. Thursday evening, he says he was misquoted. What do you make of that?
Well, first is first, I think that, with the greatest respect to him, he cannot produce the list by himself. So you can immune him for whatever he's saying. And Nigerians are not interested in it will come, it could not come, it could have come, should it have come, when would it have come, it's come. No. Nigerians are only interested in a government that understands that time is money. It is essential for government to settle down on time. And you cannot have been momentarily declared president since February, have been sworn in since May, and still tell the world you can't form government. Rwanda is forming government within a week. Ghana is forming government within a couple of days. South Africa formed government the same day. These are all countries that have also done elections and have formed government. Nigeria, especially under this presidency, gives the impression that it's a stroll in the park when they really need to be a bit of speed introduced. Even for the members of their party, They must nervously wait to see who made the list, who didn't make the list, and all the antecedent consequences of how that is going to play out. They still have to have and think about the consequences of when the list is finally produced, how they're even going to manage their own people who may probably feel disenfranchised. All of this is there. Then for the country, they need to understand that private sector players they calibrate their positions from the views of government, because government will create policies. Who is in charge of that? Where is the direction? It's just unacceptably too slow. It took 6 months the last time. For whatever reason, is it going to take 6 months now? Should it take even months? What did they do with the time in between February and now? If you didn't know, the president said he didn't know most of the people that came the first time. You've had about 4 years and a couple of months in office. Don't you know the people you want to go?
Yeah.
You ran on...
That was my next question. You know, he did say that he will not be pressured into appointing people that he doesn't know. So do we get the impression that he actually appointed people that he didn't know in 2015?
Well, I mean, let's be fair a little bit, and let's be, reasonable. Anybody who comes into government for the first time, maybe like when Obasanjo came in 1999, usually the party machineries and those that are the party leaders will be the one that would generate almost all of the names on the list. And the president will just basically go with that. Normally, during the second term, the president would have wanted to bring in some of the, the kind of team he wants. Maybe try to get a little bit more, specialized, skilled people. He needs a bit more fire, whatever it is that he wants to do with his cabinet. But what we're saying is that you cannot have that burden or placed upon you, or you took for yourself, because we still believe that that mandate is obviously not the right mandate, that court will determine it otherwise. You can't have February till date not to have thought about who you want. You should have figured those ones out. Who do you need? Who are the people? Who is headhunting for you? How are you finding them? If you want to bring out people you know, then you need to bring out your diary. Look at all the names you can find from the last 30 years that you've been in public space, bring them out, and then decide, run the phone calls. But if your excuse in the fourth industrial revolution that is very fast is that you are being pressured after maybe 100 and something days since you're sworn in, and maybe after about almost 40 days since you've gotten your handover again, and you're handing over to yourself, you don't need to study any handover note. All of this is just pure indolence. And I think we need to explain to the president that he started drawing his own personal salary from May 29th, and therefore he needs to get busy with the job like immediately. Nobody's pressuring him. People are only wondering that why other countries are being a little bit more proactive and faster. He's a bit too slow.
Well, former President Goodluck Jonathan has also asked this administration to implement the report of the 2014 National Constitution Conference, which was actually carried out during former President Goodluck Jonathan's tenure. Do you think this is bulk passing?
No, it's not. I think that anybody who has been president of the country, or let's even use a governor, for example, so we just spare the president for a couple of minutes. Anybody that has been governor of any state will naturally agonize when he sees that there are things in the file that can help, the situation that is now on ground. Some of them are also wiser after leaving office. And so I think that what President Jonathan is trying to tell President Buhari is that we cannot continue pretending that we don't have this national dialogue challenge before us. Obasanjo has said it. Almost everybody has said it. Now all the ethnic groups are pulling themselves apart. So Jonathan is probably trying to tell him that, why don't you go back to that which has been done with taxpayers' money, albeit under my administration? Why don't you look at it? Perhaps some of the solutions to this problem may exist there, but it's for the person in charge now to determine precisely how he wants to solve this problem. But I tell you what, I get progressively nervous at the level at which all the tribes and all the ethnic jingoists are pushing the country towards a point of no return, some kind of tipping point. If somebody gets killed, why must it be automatically, immediately assumed to be this before investigation? Why must it be like that? If somebody gets, you get the point I'm making?
Yes,
the point I'm making is that people are falling into the convenient tribal argument that is pushing everything all in the wrong direction, and there are consequences. Number one, as a country, we should not accept that we're going to criminalize an entire ethnic group for whatever reason. Number two, we should understand that when you push for Armageddon in your country and you push for an implosion of your country, have you considered precisely how unpleasant war can be? And therefore, I will expect the federal government, if they know what they're doing, to now come forward very, very frontally and say, no, this will no longer be acceptable here. You cannot make divisive comment in the country. We're not going to break up this country, whatever is what. The problems that Nigerians have will be solved. We will do whatever we need to do. And if you ask me, if you ask Atiku to come and be president, he'll clearly be able to solve this problem because I think he's been thinking about it properly for a long time.
Segun Sowunmi, former spokesman, Atiku Abubakar, presidential candidate. Thank you very much for speaking with me. It's been a pleasure.